The biggest message for today's show is talking about brand new firmware updates and feature upgrades for the entire Canon PTZ product line. These updates are going to cover everything from the CRN 100, their entry-level base PTZ camera that comes in at just $21.99 MSRP, all the way up to their flagship CRN 700 camera at $96.99 MSRP, and of course the CRX 300 outdoor PTZ camera. We are going to talk about some of the exciting new features available throughout the entire product line, some of the new firmware updates available for these cameras, and some of the updates that are available for specific models within this camera range as well. So for our dealers who are selling the Canon PTZ cameras, you're going to find that these features are going to make it easier than ever to sell them. Now, of course, I could talk a lot about the Canon cameras, but like we do here at Broadfield, we always like to bring in the expert whenever possible, and that's why I invited David to join us. David, can you introduce yourself to our dealers?
Firmware? Yes. Again, my full name is David Ducco. I've been working for Canon for almost 10 years now, and it's really been exciting developments that we now have this entire line of PTZ products, including 2 controllers. And I'm going to go over the RC IP1000 controller, which is our latest controller, and really why that controller makes, really stands out in the market right now. But yeah, I'd love to really get into these PTZ updates for you, which really improve the low light capabilities, color, just really feature-rich set of PTZ updates, which are available right now by downloading from our website, from our support website for the PTZ cameras.
Yeah, that's great. And David, we're going to talk a little bit about these updates one by one, but we're also going to have you fire up a demo and show off some of these exciting updates to our dealer base. And you'll see that one of the most exciting updates available is free auto tracking is now available with all Canon PTZ cameras. David, can you tell us about that auto tracking tool?
Yeah, the auto tracking is part of a suite of what we call add-on applications. And so these add-on applications are actually applications that can be installed in the PTZs themselves. We have the auto tracking application and we have the auto loop application. I'm going to go cover more onto the auto tracking today. And really, this is very, very useful for those who do not know the benefits of auto tracking. You can imagine all of these scenarios where you want to track. You don't necessarily want an operator, having to follow somebody all the time manually. You can just have the PTZ do it for you. And these applications do not require any kind of third-party PC or laptop. You can just install it in the PTZ themselves and go over that. So really what's exciting about this new firmware update is that we used to have this auto tracking available as a paid update. But with this firmware update, as soon as you update your firmware, you get free auto tracking built in. And it comes at no extra cost. And really is a feature-rich set of tools for you. And I'm going to cover those details.
Absolutely. And the free auto tracking that's built in is really going to help our dealers sell more of these Canon PTZ cameras. If you're selling into the pro AV space in a corporate market, being able to set up basic auto tracking for something like a keynote address is something that your customers are going to be looking for. In education and house of worship markets, the basic auto tracking is often enough to satisfy those customers that are looking for a very streamlined, easy-to-use production. And as David mentioned, for your customers who want more advanced auto tracking, there is still the upgradable software available from Canon that does get into those rich features. We're going to focus on the free auto tracking, the new feature that was added to these cameras, because the goal, of course, is to sell more PTZ cameras into those marketplaces and others that we can suggest along the way. So, David, tell us a little bit about what's included in that free auto tracking.
Firmware. The free auto tracking shares a lot of the same technology as our paid version. One is that it really relies on our superior face detection of algorithms to really follow your speaker and lock onto them. The sizing can be changed, so you can go from a close up anywhere to a wide shot, and that is a great option. And you can also define boundaries of where you do not want to auto track somebody. That can be very important, where you can actually tell the PTZ, not to pick up a new subject for your tracking. There's a few limitations, and of course, that those are more the customizable boundary areas for many different other use cases, and that's where you want the paid version. But there's still a lot to be said for this free auto tracking version, and really it utilizes the same technology, same response, same performance as the paid.
Firmware. And one of the things that I really want to draw a dealer's attention to is you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the presentation screen that we have the applicable cameras that these features that we're talking about will work for. You can see the entire indoor PTZ range from the CRN 100, 300, 500, 700, all have this free auto tracking available now in that new firmware. And that auto tracking gives you some subject improvement capabilities as well, right? Firmware?
Yes, that's correct. In the previous versions of the auto tracking software, there were some situations where when people cross, and this is of course something that you would expect there to be a problem, when people cross each other, either the subject moves behind somebody or in front of somebody, the algorithm would get confused a little bit sometimes. But we've improved that, and now this kind of collision which happens is accounted for, and the auto tracking performance for both the free and the paid versions benefits from these improvements of our algorithm and processing.
And you're taking advantage of the autofocus within the camera itself. So now that auto tracking capability on something like the CRN 700 is going to be even more advanced, right?
That's correct. The CRN 700, as you know, Jim, has the most advanced auto focus systems of the line, because it does eye detection as well.
Yeah.
And benefits from the processing.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we like to see too from a firmware update perspective. Canon is always looking to get the most out of their cameras, and it's really a good argument for making this the choice for those customers that you're reaching out to. So now, in addition to this better focus control, you're also adding smoother movements, taking advantage of the robotics within the cameras too, right?
Right. So with this new firmware, when you do you utilize the paid version, this is one feature that the paid version will get you the ability to have smoother starts and stops, so that the camera movements can look more natural. Most people want the camera to look like as if a human is operating that camera, and that this allows that capability.
Absolutely. You know, there are certain production requirements that everyone looks for to duplicate the cameraman that is going to be available to them. The PTZ cameras exist in a world where there aren't the human resources to operate the camera. So now when you add tools like the auto tracking, you're always looking to duplicate as natural movements as possible. And then you can also set up prohibited tracking areas that allow you to focus more, especially in an education environment, maybe on the presentation materials that have to complement the lecture or the speaker, right? Firmware?
Well, the prohibited tracking area is designed so that when a subject is, like in this example, and you can see it on the screen, when a subject, you can have multiple speakers, multiple people coming in and out of a stage where they're presenting. The prohibited tracking areas prevent the PTZ from selecting someone when they move back into the seat, for example. You don't want the camera to necessarily follow the speaker all the way into the seats. And so you could specify a boundary where you want the camera to stop tracking the subject and stop picking up new people in the crowd. And so that's important, because a lot of times what's not in the range of auto detection, auto targeting, is just as important as what is. And so that really helps to define, where you do not want the camera to follow a subject and where you want them to stop.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really no different than pulling a good focus on a camera. You want to make sure that the auto tracking is focused on the subject and the subject area that's most important to it. So now you're not only defining the subject area, but you're undefining the other areas that are not of interest, knowing that once your speaker strays into those, it would be much less important to follow them into that area. And this, of course, also adds to improved subject composition, right?
Firmware? Right. In both the free and paid version, the subject composition is a value, it's a parameter where you want to define, the composition. You want a close up, you want a wide shot, you want someone on the left or the right side. Of course, with the free version, it's centered. However, with the sizing, whatever change you make to the composition, these adjustments are much more reactive with this PTZ firmware update on all the indoor PTZs. So it's more sensitive to adjustments on the fly as you're changing your sizing and your composition for the subject.
Perfect. And now that we've talked about some of these exciting new features and what's included in the free auto tracking, the paid auto tracking, David, I would love it if you could fire up a little bit of a demo, show off exactly what that free auto tracking application looks like with the Canon PTZ cameras, and we should give a quick little demo of that for our dealers now.
Yep, I'm all ready.
Awesome, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. This is the web UI, so you could just type in the browser's PTZ's IP address to bring up the web server on the PTZ. And here on these application settings for the auto tracking, this is actually an N300. All I did was I installed the latest firmware, and it gave me this auto tracking light, we call it. And here you can see that this display sizing can be changed anywhere from like a wide shot. I'm just going to make it a little tighter and so it's centered. And then you can turn it on, and you'll see that it picks up my face. It's utilizing, like I said, the auto tracking technology. I'm going to turn it off for just a second. Some other options that you can define are the initial position. So say you lose the subject for whatever reason, too many people in the crowd, they just run off. You can actually define a default position where if it loses the subject like it did, it'll just come back to this default position where it's going to wait until a new target enters the frame. And that's a very important feature. So lastly, just wanted to show you, there are, like we were just talking about, there are halting areas, meaning boundaries where you do not want the tracking to continue. So if in this lower part of this frame you see this yellow boundary box, there's a crowd where you do not want the camera to follow the speaker, then you can just define that quickly. You get up to 4 of them, which you can define all over, in different sizes. You can adjust these, of course, on the fly and define them. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. And I'm just going to go back to my initial auto tracking, and it's just a matter of turning it on. Like I said, it picks up my face. I can stand up. I can move around. It's going to follow me, a typical speaker on the stage where they're moving back and forth, pointing to the screen. I can try to lose it. Well, it's actually kind of hard to lose now. But if it lost me, it would actually go back to that initial position that I defined from the beginning. And so those are some simple parameters that can utilize a very powerful tool. And that's really a very basic demo of our free light version of the auto tracking.
That's great. So now not only are we giving our dealers a demo, but you got a couple of cardio steps in as well.
I got my steps in.
So, David, the other thing I wanted to talk about is it's not just the auto tracking that's included with these cameras now, but there are several other new features included in this new firmware as well. And we shouldn't gloss upon those as either, because in certain workflows, these features are also very important. They include a USB webcam, firmware tilt operation range limiter, enhanced focus and zoom speed, and serial number priority. Strong noise reduction. And priority for that. So, David, let's go into some of these features a little bit more. What exactly was improved with that USB webcam output?
The USB webcam, people may not know that the N300 and N100 cameras can be used as a USB video class device, a UVC device. And what that gives you is the capability to just tether your laptop or computer to the N100 or N300 with a USB cable. And that's all you need. You don't need any additional software for your whatever you're doing. You're streaming, you're using it as for Zoom or Teams. And it's a great capability. So what the difference is, though, now is that we have added the YUV color space, colorimetry of YUV, which some applications need. And also, it's just some people prefer to work with YUV rather than the other codecs. So that's an addition.
Absolutely, and that's an important feature for our customers that are selling into the Pro AV space. When you're talking about corporate keynote addresses, investment meetings, what they're looking to do is increase their production a lot of times into the typical Zoom or web Teams meeting. They can do that with a Canon PTZ camera, installing it right into the USB port of their machine. The next feature we want to talk about is the pan tilt operation, the range limiter.
Firmware? Yes. So this is actually a really important feature, especially for people who use teleprompters. You can imagine that there are definitely, whether it's a stage or you're really limited in your angle of view because of your teleprompter, you do not want your PTZ to stray or the operator to make a mistake and go beyond the boundaries of where you want to see. So this applies for all our PTZs now, and you get this range limiter, a very big feature request that we implemented in this PTZ firmware update.
Absolutely. Super easy to set up and use these parameters. So again, in a staging environment, in something with a teleprompter, house of worship market, this is going to be a key feature to not only talk to your customers about, but to do a quick little demo with an eval camera that's available here at Broadfield as well. Next is the enhanced focus, zoom, and speed resolution. Firmware?
Right. So with our line of PTZs, some of the values were too broad. Like we had 16 steps for the zoom, for example, with this firmware update, we increased the granularity of those steps so that users have finer control over where they want that speed to actually be. So really a great way to just not necessarily improve the speed overall, but the granularity of control that applies to all the PTZs.
Absolutely, and it's not just a slight upgrade. It's a giant upgrade with the number of steps available in between now.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's great. And then next is we're showing that, and this is the setup and the configuration for that, right?
Right. This is the focus controls, and you can see what a big difference it makes. Not just just a few steps, but really just 3 steps: low, middle, high, and to go to a much broader range of focus values and zoom values. So yeah, part of that upgrade that will really benefit your control over the cameras.
And again, pointing out in that lower right corner, this is available across the entire Canon PTZ product line, and it is a firmware update that's available for all the models across the entire family and across the entire range. And the next is the improved strong noise reduction. Firmware?
Right. So the feature is called the signal to noise priority, though we can consider it strong noise reduction. And what it does is that there is noise reduction for all the PTZ cameras. The 1-inch sensor cameras, the CRN 500 and CRN 700, benefit from that larger sensor because it gets the larger photo sites. So often people really like the low light performance of those 1-inch sensors. As we get down to the N100, the N300, and the CRX 300, those utilize 1/2.3-inch sensors, and because it's a smaller sensor, of course, you get more noise in low light situations. So what this signal to noise priority feature does is it allows you to not only utilize the automatic signal to noise reduction of the camera, but it actually applies some special algorithms to reduce the noise, which help preserve detail and to reduce chroma aberrations, such as, chroma meaning color. So you'll see a lot of color noise in some instances, which can detract from the detail. That's how I explain it to most of my customers, that it really does have a superior methodology to reduce the noise rather than just kind of like a blanket, noise reduction that doesn't take into account really the color channels. So it's a very important feature for the N100 and CRN 300.
Absolutely. You're getting a little bit more out of the image sensors in those cameras by adding to the technology that really can make the most of them. And as you mentioned, in the 1-inch image sensor, they work so well in that low light category that now what you're doing in some of the more affordable models is bridge that gap and add that capability to give the users a little bit better performance out of those cameras. The firmware update that we're speaking about adds a lot of new features to the PTZ cameras, and these features are available to Canon users. The CRN 100 has some exciting new features with preset trace thumbnail display, a still image during a preset move, and SRT dynamic bitrate. David, can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Firmware? Yes. This is really a catch-up update for the N100. It catches up the feature set of the N100 to our other PTZ indoor models. One of the important feature updates that we did in the second half of last year was the thumbnail of the preset camera positions or camera angles. And so in the other PTZs, you could, once you make a thumbnail, you could decide to actually put a thumbnail image next to the preset camera save that you do. Now the N100 gets that capability. Another capability is that during moves from one preset camera angle to another camera angle, you can actually just hide the move and just put a still image over that move. It can be distracting, seeing a huge move from one position to another, one preset position to another. So that's an option that now all our PTZs have. The SRT adaptive bitrate is really important because a lot of times when utilizing SRT over the internet, you can have huge fluctuations in your bandwidth. And often what happens is when you do have bandwidth that fluctuates too low, it can just drop the connection or really result in a lot of bad artifacts and blockiness. So what the SRT adaptive bitrate, it utilizes SRT more efficiently, really kind of pulls the back channels of that protocol to deliver a superior image and also prevent just dropouts, meaning connection loss. Very important features from all our PTZs available now.
Firmware. And then we added the SMPTE color bars, which is now available on the CRN 500, 300, and 100. And these were already supported, of course, on the CRN 700 and CRX 300. So now that's being added to the full product line, right? Firmware.
Correct. That's right.
And then we have lots of new features to add to the CRN 700. David, why don't you go through this?
Yes, the CRN 700 is benefiting from a lot of the same features now with this firmware update that our Cinema EOS line of cameras has, such as the C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II and the C70. So one of them is that the available clear scan resolutions is available for you to try to dial out problems. Clear scan, as most of you know, is an ability for the shutter to go by frequency. It's changed by frequency rather than by angle or speed. And this can help dial out problems with displays, LED walls, strobing, any kind of artifacts like that. And by having more available clear scan resolutions, you can help yourself and help the customer get rid of these artifacts. It also includes, now the N700 includes Canon 709. This is a new Rec 709 Gamma that is available in our cinema line that can give you punchier midtones, better flesh tones, and better contrast overall. Some people prefer it over YDR, which has been a gamma that many people have utilized for a while. It also includes what's called the CMT 709 LUT. The N700 has LUT capabilities. So this LUT can actually be useful, especially for post-production, because the CMT 709 LUT gives you a lot of the same, Rec 709 look that you're familiar with Canon, but it actually preserves a lot of the highlight details better with more compression towards the top. And lastly, I just want to touch on that the N700 gets the G gain, meaning you can control the amount of green in your highlights. You could control red and the blue, but hey, having green really helps control green and magenta. Another, option to give you the color that you want and correct any problems that you have with color or white balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the available clear scan resolutions, it really does make it a great camera for those virtual production sets and for people looking to shoot in front of some of these video walls and LED display solutions. So it really is a great camera for those purposes.
Right.
David, I want to take a breath here because I know we're doing a little bit long, but obviously there's lots to talk about in the PTZ camera product lineup. And now I'm going to go into the second half of the show and talk about some of the great new improvements for the RC IP1000, which is Canon's flagship PTZ camera controller. The PTZ camera controller is a great workflow tool with the entire family of Canon PTZ cameras, and they're constantly adding features and capabilities that are making it much more of a production control unit than just a simple PTZ controller in itself. The RC IP1000 updates include multi-display IP preview screens, touch presets, thumbnail images, waveform monitor and vector stroke display, auto tracking controls, copy camera settings, and more. Let's fire up a little bit of a demo and start with that part and show off some of these great new features. Take it away, David.
Thanks, Jim. I've actually just switched over to our IP preview. So the RCIP 1000 controls our cameras through the XC protocol, our IP-based camera control protocol. And where it really stands out is its capabilities with its LCD display. Now, previously, you could control a lot through the LCD display and see a lot through the LCD display. But now with this firmware update, you can send that out. That same LCD display IP preview and analysis tools out of the HDMI port or the SDI port from the IP1000. So here I'm showing you a vectorscope and waveform, an RGB parade. You can also just do Luma on the waveform, and that's just one view. I'm going to switch over to the multi-view. So on this LCD display, what's great about it is that you don't just have to press buttons to select your camera. You can actually, on the LCD, you can actually just select the image, and that just makes it so much easier because, of course, you can't necessarily remember what button is which camera, and just having that labeled clearly and seeing it can really help you decide, which angle to use in your camera control and switching. And also, you can actually send out a preset list. So a preset, the thumbnails that I was talking about, you can actually see it on a big screen so that you can actually select these thumbnails, not of course on your monitor, but on the controller itself. You can select the different preset camera positions quite easily. So that's just a little demo of the many different capabilities of this particular controller and why it actually stands out from the market.
That's great. One of the first things you demoed there is the outputting and the multi-display of the IP preview screens. You'll see on the slide that we have here, it shows you some of the different configurations and use where that multi-display screen can be output. So this is going to be a great upgrade in a production system where they are using multiple PTZ cameras to not only get the control capability, but to know what those cameras are outputting and having access to all of that right from the control system itself. Firmware. Next, David, you talked about that touch preset and the thumbnail images. So now what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen is actually what that RCIP 1000 is going to look like once you program those thumbnails, right?
Right. It's going to look like that on the LCD itself. You can, of course, export that to the monitor, as I just showed you, and you can just touch select these positions. So again, having that visual IP preview can be a real way to get the camera, select the right camera, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the applications I can think of also is in a house of worship environment, where sometimes that production is going to be changing hands from week to week as volunteer resources become available. By having the image, it makes it super easy for even the most novice person to come in and quickly show them how to help handle that production in the house of worship.
That's a good point.
And again, you have that display screen, and you can take all of that and output it to a larger external monitor as well. And you can do that either through SDI or HDMI. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
That's great. Firmware. And then you also showed off the waveform and vectorscope display. So you do have that available from the output of the RCIP 1000 itself, right?
Right. Firmware? Exactly. It's in the firmware.
Perfect.
The new firmware.
And then, of course, there's also some auto tracking controls that you can take advantage of some of these great auto tracking features that we led off the PTZ show with right through the RCIP 1000 itself, right?
That's correct. So the auto tracking does give you the user some manual control, meaning that you can touch select the target. So if you do not, like, if you have multiple people on the stage on a panel, you can just, target different people. And that's a good touchscreen way to utilize this controller with our auto tracking software.
Firmware. And while it's not a new feature, one of the top features that I like to point out in the RCIP 1000 is that Canon HC control protocol. That HC control protocol allows this unit to not only control the Canon PTZ camera lineup, but you can also control some of the Canon cinema cameras as well, right, David? Firmware.
Right. It's really meant to kind of further the whole progress towards a multi-camera system environment where you're working oftentimes with both PTZ cameras that are remotely controlled, but also manned cameras or just stationary cameras. And you can actually color correct all those cameras, including the cinema cameras, from the controller. A lot of people want the controller just to color correct these cameras across the board. And you can also change the zoom and iris of the stationary cameras, cinema cameras as well. So a lot of capabilities with this HC protocol.
That's great. And then now with the new firmware, with the RCIP 1000, you can also copy camera settings. So you can actually take from one PTZ camera to many PTZ cameras just with like a USB thumb drive, right? Firmware.
Right. In fact, you don't necessarily. You can use the thumb drive, but with this controller, you no longer have to kind of run the thumb drive to each single PTZ. You could just run it from the controller, where you're copying the settings of one PTZ model. It has to be model to model, the same model. One camera to another camera, just using the controller and bypassing the need for the USB thumb drive. But you can still do it the old-fashioned way, which is just use the thumb drive. Either way.
Yep. No, and that's going to be great for setting up these multi-camera environments, for setting up portable environments where sometimes the production has to be set up, torn down, and then set up again. You can do a lot of that with those new camera copy settings. So again, we talked about all these great new upgrades with the RCIP 1000 and the entire Canon PTZ product lineup, everything from the CRN 100, 300, 500, 700, and of course the outdoor camera, the CRS 300. These firmware updates are all designed to be available to your customers to easily download and install on their Canon PTZ cameras, and it's going to allow you to offer the Canon PTZ cameras in more applications and solutions than ever before. Whether you're building a corporate pro AV setup, house of worship, education, or a staged environment that requires the advanced production protocols and production controls, Canon has the right solution across the entire board. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jim, for letting me get the message across that these PTZ updates are out there and they are of great benefit to your dealers and customers.
Absolutely. And if you or your customers have any questions, need support, you can reach out to our Broadfield sales team at 800-634-5178. We work very closely with David and the entire team over at Canon. We can help get your customers up and running, and we can help you put together the perfect production system for all of their needs. Give us a call. Tune in every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next week. Cheers.
Broadfield Distributing is a value-added distributor of live production, streaming, video editing, and storage products. We only sell to resellers. We are always looking for new dealers, so call us at 1-800-634-5178 or email sales@broadfield.com. You'll like doing business with Broadfield because we make it easy to do business.
Firmware.